So everyone, it's a couple of minutes after the hour. And so we are going to go ahead and get started, and we'll use whatever time we need today for this special Q&A session. But just on behalf of Jennifer, myself, and the entire Natural Hazard Center team, we are really excited to welcome you to this special Q&A session for our most recently released special call for proposals as part of the Weather Ready Research Award program. And so, Jennifer, would you be willing, please, to go ahead and share the slides for today? Thank you. And while we're getting those up and going, could we just take a minute, and could everybody in the chat box, could you just say hi to your fellow participants and let us know where are you logging in from?
And Laura, you can see the slides, right?
I can. They look perfect. Thank you. And welcome to Jonathan in Athens, Alyssa on the other side of the nation calling in from Washington. We got some Midwesterners calling in. So great to see all of you wherever you are joining from. Please know you are so welcome here. And my name is Lori Peak, and I'm the director of the Natural Hazard Center. And so that means it's my honor to get to kick off this special webinar and to welcome you all here to this Q&A session. Next slide, please. So our objectives today for our hour that we have together, first and foremost, we just want to introduce those who may not be familiar to the Weather Ready Research Award program, which was established just a couple of years ago with the support of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration to complement our long-standing National Science Foundation funded Quick Response Research Award program. So we're going to orient you very briefly to this really wonderful and vitally important Weather Ready Research Award program. Then we're going to review the most recent special call for proposals and get really into some of the nitty-gritty details in terms of what we're asking for this time around with our focus on wildfire and fire weather. Then we're going to share some of the resources that we have available to help you with the proposal writing process and to make sure you meet that upcoming deadline or set of deadlines. And then we're going to have ample time for Q&A. So that's what we're going to do today. Next slide, please. So I just want to do a brief overview, and then we're very fortunate today to have Castle Williams as well as Jonathan Moat from NOAA on the call with us. And so they're going to talk to us a little more about the broader vision that really led to this partnership. But I just want to say at the outset that this Weather Ready Research Award program, it's been made possible with the support of NOAA's Weather Program Office, and especially some of the really visionary social scientists who are in that program, and including Gina Esco, as well as, again, Castle Williams and Jonathan Moat, who you're going to meet today, as well as with the support of the National Weather Service and the National Severe Storms Laboratory, as well as the support of the National Science Foundation. And so those are really the funders who are driving this work that we're going to be talking about today. I'm also so pleased to note that due to the support, we've actually had 4 special calls that have been released to date. And some of you who are on this call today have actually been the recipients of funding issued through Call 1, which was focused most broadly on really weather ready research and advancing research in the social, behavioral, and economic sciences related to weather ready research. But in addition to driving novel research, one of our visions with this is to really start to build a weather ready research community of social and behavioral scientists who are ready to do this work and are capacitated in various ways with the tools, the instruments, the data that is needed to advance work in the weather ready realm. And so our first special call was broadly on weather ready research. We had a second special call that was very specific and was aimed at promoting instrument and data publication among researchers who have been doing work in the weather realm broadly defined. And so so we funded data and instrument publication focused on research on heat-related research, tornado-related research, severe storm-related research, and in other realms as part of that special call. The first and second special calls are now closed. As we'll talk about today, the materials are available from those first and second special calls. Right now, we have 2 special calls that are currently open and accepting proposals. One focused on tornado-ready quick response research. And Jen, if you would be willing, since that call is open and we're accepting proposals related to that, would you drop in the chat the link to the tornado ready special call that, again, we're accepting proposals there on an open basis. And then today, our reason for gathering, our special call 4 is focused on wildfire ready quick response research and data publication that we're currently accepting proposals for, and again, will be our focus today. And so people who are interested in learning more about the founding and evolution of this program, as well as the outcomes, you can find the currently available weather ready reports, as well as access published data and instruments that have become possible as a part of this program on our website. And Jen, if you'd be willing to drop that web link that I also have on the slides into the chat as well, that would be wonderful. And so now, next slide, please, Jen. So I'm going to pause with my overview, and actually we're going to stop sharing the slides right now so we can see each other and see our colleagues at NOAA. And I'm actually going to turn the mic over to Castle Williams, who is with us, as well as Jonathan Moe, who is with us as well. And they're just going to say a few more words about what really drove NOAA's desire and vision to support this Weather Ready Research Award program.
Wonderful. Can you hear me, Lori?
Castle, yes, and it's great to see you, and over to you.
Great. Thank you so much. I think before I even start, I need to thank you and our partnership with the Natural Hazard Center, as well as NSSL and others at NOAA, just for this great opportunity to be able to do this. And even more thanks to those on the call today. We wouldn't be able to do this research without you, and we really want you to know how important you are to the community when it comes to this type of research. So in thinking about the vision of this partnership, we started to realize over the last few years that we needed to create research that really helps us sustain what we learn. And what I mean by that is by thinking about how can we better create and acknowledge and pass on a lot of these research findings that we're seeing. And what we really came to the conclusion is that we needed to do this through the presentation of data. We needed to have that data. We needed to be able to access it and be able to use it in order to help measure the mission of NOAA, which is, and the National Weather Service, which is to protect lives, save property, and advance the national economy. And without that data, we really didn't feel like we were able to measure that mission. And so it really boiled down to the need to have both longitudinal data and quick response data. And when we looked at our capabilities and capacity within NOAA, we don't really have access to those quick response capabilities, which is why this partnership with the Natural Hazard Center became so important, because those capabilities do exist in that area. So that really is the broad vision of what really drove us to being able to make this partnership happen, to encourage more data publication and more instrument publication. And it's going to also kind of craft the future of what this looks like by being able to continue to represent that data, look back on it, and really help us measure that mission. And before I throw it back, I just wanted to ask John if there was anything else that he saw that we should highlight here today.
Well, I just want to say this is a very exciting effort, coming from both academia and from philanthropy, to see this bringing together of multiple parties in such fast, quick, rapid response research is just so exciting. And I'm really excited about the instrument and data sharing, more from the open science side of things, and replicating and validating our research instruments, our data. It just means so much more, so much to the community moving forward. So that's about, I'm new to NOAA, that's why I should say 6 months, so I can't really speak to the genesis of the vision. I can only say how excited I am about this.
And Dr. Gina Esco wishes she could be here today, but she just wanted us to send along her thanks to all of you as well. And we're just really excited to hear from you and to see what things you might bring to the table. So we're here, we'll be in the background. Feel free to ask questions in the chat, and we'll be here for the Q&A later on. So if you have any questions, please let us know.
Excellent. Thank you, Castle, and thank you, Jonathan. And just as always, inspiring and thoughtful words. And we are so grateful for this partnership as well, and for the vision that you have brought to the table, and of course that Gina always brings. And now I'm going to turn it over to the one and only, the wondrous Jennifer Tobin, who's going to give us an overview of the special call. And Jen, as you go along, I'll make sure and drop the relevant links in the chat as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. So as Lori was saying earlier, please do not forget we still have call 3 open. Today we're talking about call 4, which is the wildfire ready research. But call 3, which is focused on tornadoes, please let your students know, anybody who's interested, any colleagues you have that might be interested in doing tornado research, that call is going to be open through October. So please do submit your proposals for that as well. All that information is found on our website, and I dropped that link into the chat. And then, so if you're interested in applying for call 4, the weather ready research, please do begin by reading the full special call on our website. I'm just going to go over a few main details here today. And if you have any questions as you're developing your proposal, please feel free to reach out to me prior to submitting so I can walk you through what is expected. If there's something online that doesn't make sense to you, if you have some clarifying questions, please feel free to ask me and email me anytime. So the application window for this special call is open on a rolling basis, which means it's open right now. It's open through December 31st of this year, which means you're welcome to submit proposals at any time. And there's not one singular due date for this open call window. And the purpose of leaving it open like this throughout the year is that we want the researchers to have the opportunity to apply for awards as events occur throughout the rest of the year. So all proposals as they come in will be reviewed by the Natural Hazard Center review team, as well as our NOAA colleagues. And we review them as soon as we get them, as soon as we receive them. And we typically get responses back to authors within 1 to 2 weeks, depending on how many we're getting at a time, of course. And so please note, though, that no data collection can begin until proposals are accepted by us and the required documents are signed and submitted to the Natural Hazard Center, as outlined in the submission guidelines on the website. So for this particular special call, we are issuing 3 different tiers of awards that range from $1,000 to $7,500 each. So now I'm going to briefly go over the criteria for each award tier, but please make sure and read the full guidelines for each one, as there are different criteria for each of the award tiers. So tier 1 is between $1,000 and $7,500. This is for pre-wildfire activities. So if you're interested in researching things like fire weather forecasting, baseline information on wildfire risk perception, preparedness or mitigation, those types of research that are going to capture what's happening pre-wildfire. And the guidelines are listed here with this link that Lori will drop into the chat. And tier 1 and tier 2 have pretty similar guidelines. Tier 2 is focused on during and post wildfire activities. So this would be things such as fire weather alerts, warning receipt and processing, evacuation decision-making and behavior, wildfire impacts, displacement, rebuilding, and recovery processes post wildfire. And then tier 3 is a little different here. For tier 3, we're going back to that instrument and data publication where we are interested in wildfire and or fire weather instrument and data publication. So if you've already done research in this area and you want to publish it online, we will provide funding for that process. And this will be publishing it on DesignSafe, which you can find more information about on our website, and then the DesignSafe link as well. And the specific guidelines for tier 3 are listed on our website too. Okay, just some key considerations to keep in mind as you're thinking through applying for this money. So first, please make sure in each proposal that you include a clear and feasible timeline. That is really critical. Some people leave this part out, but in order for our reviewers to make a good assessment, we need to understand that you have plans for data collection, analysis, publication, report writing, and such, so that reviewers can see if you can realistically complete what you're saying you're going to complete within the very quick time frame that we're asking you to complete this research. So please make sure that's included in your proposals. Don't leave that part out. And then in terms of award funding, researchers may need to begin collecting data prior to funding. And so this is a key caveat here, because although we say you cannot begin collecting data until you submit all your paperwork. Sometimes the processing of the payments through CU Boulder takes a little bit longer. And if you need to get into the field quickly, once your paperwork is approved, you might need to begin collecting data before the funding actually gets to you. So just keep that in mind, that you might have some upfront costs associated with your research that will then give you the money within, as quickly as we can after it's been approved. But we cannot extend any of the deliverable deadlines that we've instituted on our website for these calls due to any delays in funding. So please just make sure you understand that. And then data collection cannot begin until IRB approval is submitted to us. That's one of the things that we require if your research is based on interviewing human subjects or working with human subjects in any capacity. We will need IRB approval. And so if you're interested in studying a wildfire, as it's happening or doing a post-wildfire event, we actually really recommend that you get IRB pre-approval. And so we have all the criteria for this information on our website. We have a link on our website that sends you to an article to tell you how to do this, but it really is about setting up the project you think you're going to want to do and then getting pre-approval from your IRB, which has become much more common now, so that when the event happens, you can quickly fill in the information about the event that you want to study, submit it, and get a quick return from IRB so you can get into the field to collect that perishable data. So the lead investigator on all of these proposals needs to be from an academic institution based in a US state, territory, or tribal area. However, anybody else that you want to include as part of your research team does not have to be. You can have private sector people, you can have people that are outside of the US on your research team, but the lead investigator does have to be from a US institution. And award funding can be distributed not to just one person, but up to 5 people for your research. And so you can, in your award agreement that you'll fill out, you'll assign which people get which amounts of money based on what your proposal has been awarded. And just please know that payments are not, these are not like typical grants. Payments are not sent to your university. We do not cover any kind of overhead. Payments are like awards that get sent directly to individuals. So all the individuals that are receiving this money are going to be responsible for any tax ramifications that come with receiving award money. Okay. Okay, so project deliverables for these different tiers. So you're allowed to submit and apply for more than one tier of activity, but if you want to apply to more than one tier, they must be separate, completely separate and individual proposals for those different tiers. So tier 1 and tier 2 awards require that within 6 months of award activations, the researchers must review and download the Natural Hazard Center report template and style guide, and then submit a final report of up to 20 single-space pages that summarize the project activities and results from the special call. So once your award is activated, you have 6 months to carry out your research and to submit this report within 6 months timeline. And then for tier 3, which is the research and data publication, you have 3 months from award activation to publish your data and/or research instruments on DesignSafe, and then submit a data publication check sheet that we will give to you to the Natural Hazard Center. So that will be like proof of that you've completed the publication process. Okay, so I'm going to turn it back to Lori now.
Thank you, Jen. That was a fabulous overview. And I have a question. Will you stop sharing the slides for 1 minute, and then I'm going to have you reshare? I just wonder, for those of you who are on here, if you're ready to share this, would you drop in the chat based on what Jen just reviewed? So it's sort of like, think of it this way: tier 1 and tier 2 are about collecting new data. Tier 3 is about publishing data and/or instruments that you have already produced in your work. And so just kind of generally, for those coming to this call who are thinking about submitting a proposal, would you just drop in the chat for our situational awareness, who is sort of thinking tier 1, tier 2, I want to collect new data, and who is on here who's here for tier 3, I have data or an instrument that I want to publish. So if you're ready, don't worry, this isn't like a commitment, but if you're ready, will you put either tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3, or maybe all, if you think all 3? Awesome. So I'm going to check this out. Okay, so let's see. Lisa said tier 1 or 2, Christopher 1 or 2, 1 or 2 for Kiki, Ronnie tier 2, 1 or 2 for Stacia, Priya 2, Jiyoung, 2, 1, 2. Okay, Leanne, we finally have potentially a tier 3, may have an instrument or data. So Leanne, we may be calling on you. Jay said all tiers as well. Okay, so this is great. Thank you, everyone, because this kind of gives us a sense of, right, who's coming here and what are you thinking in terms of what you might be doing in relation to this proposal. So thank you.
Before you move on, Lori,
yes,
I would like to say that if you are planning on tier 1, tier 2, like most people here seem to be, tier 3 is a great opportunity then for you to say, I'm going to also publish the data that I'm collecting, which is what we really hope that you will do, your data and research instruments, so that we can make that data accessible by everybody else who would like to do the same research.
love it, Jen. And so, right, everybody who put tier 1 or tier 2, you could then say, and I'm tier 3 aspirational, come back to us. And that may mean, and just already I'm thinking about with the deadline that we've set, we're going to have to think about how that works, right? So if you come in under the tier 1 or tier 2 before our December deadline, but then would we reopen this, to get you to the tier 3 where you could publish the data or instruments? We'll talk about that in a minute. But for now, Jen, would you go ahead and reshare the slides and I'll just round this out, and then everybody on the call get ready with your questions because that's coming next. So as Jen said, I'm just going to wrap this up by sharing a few things that we wanted to point everybody on the call to that we hope can be helpful as you think about preparing to write the proposals. And so first is, past can be prologue here. Go to our website, please, and look at the reports that have already been published as a part of the call 1 with the Weather Ready Research Awards program here to see what do the final reports look like, so you can start with that end vision in mind. So please go look at the reports that are already published, and also look at the data and instruments that were already published as part of Special Call 2, because we hope that might help to give you a sense of, oh yeah, I actually could go in and publish my wildfire specific interview guide. Alyssa Cordner, I'm looking at you. For those of you who already have a lot of extensive work in this area, or I could publish my data, et cetera. So we have ample examples from Special Call 1 and Call 2 on our website. So please check those out. Next, please, we always ask you, we have 10 training modules that are now available through our National Science Foundation funded Converge initiative. And these modules deal with vital topics like IRB, broader ethical consideration for doing this kind of research, working with potentially socially vulnerable populations, the emotional challenges of doing this kind of research, and so forth. So please go check out our Converge training modules. For this special call, we're not requiring that you complete any of the modules in advance, but we recommend, especially for those who are new to the field, that you go and check out those modules. Also, we have lots of extreme events research check sheets that are now available to help with that quick update of how do you really start doing this kind of work. So we hope you'll check out that resource. And then we also have publications hyperlinked that, as Jen noted, focus on everything from IRB pre-approval. How do you go about getting this both as an individual researcher, but also if you're working with multiple institutions to do this work? IRB pre-approval and getting institutional approvals can become all the more important. So we have a paper on that. We have a paper that's available on promoting convergence research and the kind of research we're really trying to promote through the center and through Converge that is problem focused, but also solution based. So characterize the problem, but also let's figure out how to move on the problem in response to it. And I know that NOAA is deeply committed to this kind of policy and practice oriented applications of the research. And so figuring out how do we move research to operations. And then finally, we also have a paper and an entire special issue available that's focused on how do we do interdisciplinary work in terms of process, methods, and analysis. And so next slide, please. In addition to all those online resources, perhaps the most important resource of all, you already met Jennifer Tobin, who administers this research program. And as she noted, she is so happy to answer questions at any time. If you need to reach out to her, you can at has.research.awards@colorado.edu. Also, again, please go to our website. So many members of our team, as well as the NOAA team, spent so much time writing out all of those guidelines, trying to anticipate questions and so forth. So please read that really carefully in advance of submitting a proposal to make sure that you've dotted the I's and crossed the T's. And then last but not least, Jen, if you'd go ahead and stop the slide share now. We have 32 minutes remaining for any type of Q&A, anything that you want to ask. And so what we would just ask is either you can put your question in the chat and then the NOAA team or the Hazard Center team, whoever's most equipped, will come off mute and answer. But even more fun than using the chat, what we're going to do is we're going to stop spotlighting ourselves so we can see all of you, and much more fun if you want to raise your hand in the chat function and just turn on your camera, come off mute if you're comfortable, and ask any question that you want to ask. We would love to hear from you, want to use this time together to support you. So the wonderful Christopher Young, first and foremost, tell us, are you calling in from Utah? And then tell us what question, comment, concern do you want to raise and bring into the webinar? So Christopher, great to see you, and thank you for leading us off.
Great, thank you, Lori. Wonderful. I don't know. I do like to help out, but too kind, too kind. One question. Oh, yes, and I am in Utah. Salt Lake City is finally under 100 degrees during the, and that's Fahrenheit, in the middle of the day. So loving life up here for now. And we also just started our semester yesterday as well. So my main question, I mean, I always have so many questions when I attend these NHC things, but you mentioned that we can submit at any time up until the 31st. Does this work like an R&R process, or is it you submit and then you're either accepted or rejected as far as that proposal?
That question. Thank you, Christopher. So typically we just read the proposal and accept or reject. However, if you're like right there where we want to fund you, but there might be a few things that we would like to learn more about, if you weren't very clear on something, we will send it back to you and ask for clarification on some things and say, you know, if you can explain to us how this is going to be more feasible or whatever the criteria that's missing is, we'll give you that opportunity to submit again. But if it's, you know, if it's really far off and really outside of the special call and things like that, we will just flat like reject it.
Excellent, thank you.
And again, and that's where it's a good thing to send me emails if you have questions as you're developing it. You're like, oh, well, this seems a little bit outside of this, but would this be, you know, a criteria you would consider? Then we can go back and forth and answer those questions as you're developing the proposal too.
Nice. That is a great question, Christopher. And we have use the R&R from everything from very minor, like Jen coming back with the budget, you know, add more of this or remove this, or we can't do this, et cetera. So sometimes it's very minor, sometimes it is substantive. And that's the beautiful thing about NOAA and Natural Hazard Center, us getting to work together on those reviews, because sometimes what we see is like, oh, yes, or vice versa. NOAA sees something that it's like, this is so aligned with our mission priorities right now that we may not have known that or seen that. So it's a very, having this tiered review process between the Hazard Center and NOAA has been really powerful as well, and has been really helpful. When those R&Rs do come through, we try to always make sure that they're really positive, like we're asking you to do this to make sure we can reach the full potential of the proposal. So wonderful. And I know Victor put a question in the chat, and so did Lisa. And I see Leanne has hand up. as does Ronnie. So maybe I'll take, because I know Victor was having some problems with his sound earlier. And so I'll actually take Victor. So Victor said, is there a platform where I can find researchers working on wildfire warnings? And Victor, thank you for asking that. And thank you for being our visiting scholar at the Natural Hazard Center from Brazil, always asking great questions. And so Victor, to your question, I think one of the best ways to find researchers right now in this realm is to go to the Social Science Extreme Events Research Network map. And the SEER map, we have 1,420 researchers who are up there, social and behavioral scientists, and you can actually search for researchers by discipline, but you can also search for them by keyword. And so Victor, I'm not sure if people will have keywords in there that are as specific as your question, like wildfire warnings, but you might want to search for example, warning and alerts, wildfire, and look for those combos. And that might be a great way to identify potential collaborators, in addition to the more traditional ways, which is of course doing literature searches, seeing who's published in this realm, etc. But I think the SEER map and the related search functions is a great way to address your great question.
And also, Victor, this is an audience of experts. So if anybody else on the call has good answers to any of the questions that are asked, please feel free to share those in the comment box, because some of the best parts of these calls is getting that collaboration across researchers.
Totally agree. And it's always magic when people make connections on these calls and go, I want to write a proposal with you. And so great question, Victor. And then I'm going to go to Lisa's next, and then Leanne, I'll call on you next. And so Lisa said, apologies, but no micro camera on the computer. Is there a position or degree level requirement for the lead investigator? So Jen, do you want to take that one?
Yes, there is no disciplinary, well, social scientists is where we start, but we really do encourage interdisciplinary research. And then in terms of level of degrees, graduate students are more than welcome to apply. We have had undergraduates apply, but it's very rare usually. It's usually graduate students or above. But we also appreciate when PIs are professors and include graduate students and undergraduate students, which happens all the time, and vice versa. So if you are a graduate student, we do highly recommend that you apply as a PI, because you're allowed to do that. And it looks really good on your CV too.
Absolutely. And Jen, just building on that great answer, NOAA really shares our commitment to building a diverse next generation of researchers. And so to the faculty members out there, exactly as Jen said, encourage your graduate students to apply, because this really can provide the base funding to launch a master's thesis or a doctoral dissertation. My own dissertation was launched with a quick response grant. And so we are all about it. Encourage your students to apply. As Jen said, you can see on the website, we do, there are some additional things we ask for from students, but absolutely encourage students to apply, but still hold to the same deadline. So just being clear that that report or the data publication is still required. But great question, Lisa. And then we're seeing the other things come in the chat, but we'll turn to Leanne and then Ronnie next, go back to the chat, then over to Alyssa. So Leanne.
Great, thank you so much. So my question is related to the Tier 3 award. So I received a quick response award a year ago. And so now I'm trying to figure out, and I've completed the interviews from that research, which I'm really excited about. And so I'm trying to figure out if that would be an appropriate next step for, for taking basically those instruments and protocols. And I mean, I just like a little bit more information, because I did qualitative data collection. I'm trying to figure out, okay, if I'm not going to publish the actual data from that, but sort of what would that look like in terms of the data set?
Yay.
And any other thoughts you might have about that?
Leanne, I'll take that one. And you can see Jen and I thumbs up, fist
Yay.
pumping, virtual high-fiving, because that is exactly the vision and exactly what we're hoping for. And so yes, yes, and more yes, you're 100% eligible to now come in for the Tier 3. And in great news, we have both a group of Converge data ambassadors who we funded through a different mechanism, who went through the training, have published everything from what you said, from the qualitative data and instruments, IRB protocols, data and so forth, as well as the Weather Ready Special Call 2 recipients who publish similarly quantitative and qualitative instruments, data, etc. So I'll drop in the chat for you. We have these, I mean, what's fabulous, we have these examples now that we can point you directly to, including Jen and I, and Jolie and our collaborators. We published exactly what you're saying, our qualitative interview instruments from recent data collection we did related to earthquakes. So we can point you to that and say, look at this as a model of, we also didn't publish the data because of some of those privacy concerns. So we have models to point you to and strong encouragement to move forward with that tier 3 application. And we can't wait to receive it. Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go to Ronnie next.
Thanks, Leanne, also for that question, because I was kind of wondering the same thing. So yeah, I would love to be pointed towards some of those models to get our instruments up from our recent, I think, a Mitigation Matters study, and then, hopefully for this. My question was about the tier 2 awards. I know in Mitigation Matters, we were able to fund some research assistance directly through the University of Colorado Boulder as part of that stipend. Would that be possible here with these awards? And then I have one other question after that. Oh, I didn't know if you wanted me to pause to answer that.
Jen, you want to take that first question about how the funds can actually be used in the budget?
Yes. I'm off mute. Sorry, I was also getting links over into the chat box. So tell me if I don't get the whole question. So in terms of how funding can be used, it can be used really openly. So you're going to have to apply with a budget of exactly how you want to use the money. And then we send you the full amount that we approve. But it can be anything from, materials for your research, printing surveys, that kind of thing. It can be to pay research assistants. It can be to fund your own time. It can be for a variety of things, as long as you carry out the research as you've expressed in the proposal and you meet the deadlines and the criteria there. But it can be flexible in terms of like changing. You don't have to like resubmit if you want to change something in your budget, as long as you're still completing the same research that's outlined in the proposal in the budget.
Okay, is it logistically possible also? So research assistant stipends and participant remuneration are kind of the two costs I might foresee. How would those be handled in terms of, I don't know, taxes and things like that, documentation?
So the one thing about our awards is it really is an award that comes to you in a check. And so anything that you want to do with that money, it's up to the researcher and the lead investigator to distribute that money from their own pockets, essentially, to the people and the organizations or wherever you're purchasing something. It's up to you to spend that money. So by receiving the money, there are tax ramifications that come with this. It's kind of like receiving scholarship money or fellowship money. But then it is up to you then to distribute that. We don't pay directly through your university, pay like a stipend for a graduate student or anything like that. You would have to pay that. And sometimes it really differs across universities too, because we do have researchers that have universities that will then take that check from the individual and say, okay, we'll put this into a speed type or an account and then, pay your researchers, but that is on an institution basis. And we don't have any control over how that works.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Nice, great questions, Ronnie. Thank you. And I'm bouncing back to the chat now. And do you say your name, Shafeen?
That's correct, Lori. How are you?
Perfect. And I saw you said, can I make a comment, please? So I know your hand's up after Alyssa. But in the chat, you were first. And so Shafeen, why don't you go ahead and then we'll call on Alyssa next.
Thank you very much, Lori. Lori, I listen to you guys very often, but I don't say anything because I want to learn from everybody. You have amazing aura. You have an amazing way. Your team is amazing. You have an amazing way of making people feel comfortable. And the work that you're doing is godly, because you are here to save lives and you're here to make the world a better place. The comment I want to make is I'm calling you from Alphabet Communication. We are a small company based in California. What we do is we look for solutions to save lives. And some of the solutions we find it relates to where people live. So we have created an email, we have digitized every single address in the whole world, including every single apartment. We have digitized rural areas in the world, anywhere in the world, where you're able to give a lot and plot number of the exact location of any location. So we're going to be doing some, now that we have quite a few intellectual property rights all across the world, we're looking for partnerships. And when I hear questions from Victor, for example, saying, how can we work on sending some early warnings out there to people? So these are things that we work on, where we are able to send warnings before first responders send out warnings, because whenever disasters happen, it's the people on the ground that know what's going on. So we've developed an app where, you pick up the app, you hit that button saying, I need help. And as soon as you see a lot of red buttons going off, you're able to know that something's happened over here before first responders even know. So I'm going to keep it very short. You guys can connect with me on LinkedIn. We're going to be doing a quick launch on what we do. You can Google our company. You can Google my name. And we're here to work with you. We're here to work with especially educational places like yours, Lori, where if people want to use our intellectual property, as long as you're doing it to save lives and to make the world better, everything that's within the scope of everything you do, we're here to share our intellectual property with you and make the world safer, because we can't always complain about issues. We need to find solutions. And I leave it at that. Thank you, Lori.
Oh,
Amazing aura. Thank you.
Shafin, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for the kind comments and what you put in the chat. And if you would follow this up with your LinkedIn link, your email, any other possible points of connection, because I think you've probably piqued the interest of many of the researchers on this call. So thank you for that. And thank you for putting some follow-up. And we will, to everybody, I'll use this as a moment to remind, we'll put the recording for this up on our website. We'll put the slides up, and we'll make sure and download the chat so that people can come back and access that. So thank you, Shafin, for
Thank you, Lori. The last comment I'm going to make is we protect privacy. We do not sell your data to anybody. So those are important things. Unlike a lot of social media companies and a lot of companies that work in big tech, we work quietly on this thing for many, many years. I'm not going to say how many, but it's over 5 years. Anyways, I thank you all. I'll put my LinkedIn ID on the chat in a few seconds.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Beautiful. And Alyssa, over to you.
Great, thank you. I have two questions. One is, I know you said there's a sort of 6-month timer from, I forget the start point, but 6 months later, things should be finished. Is that at all flexible? So is that something that you can talk about in, say, an email conversation ahead of time, or is the 6-month deadline quite fixed?
Jen, would you like to take that one?
I would say that it is quite fixed. We do like to have the research, because a lot of this is really based on getting the research out to everyone else as quickly as possible. Sometimes we do offer extensions if it's necessary to researchers, so it can be on a case-by-case basis. Sometimes people want to continue and do a longer-term research study based off what they're doing, and they're never ready to submit that final report because they keep collecting data and things. And so sometimes we ask, okay, well, we just submit a report based on your findings you have right now, or what you've learned so far, just to have kind of a preliminary report out there. So sometimes it doesn't end up being a final report in terms of this entire research project that ends up unfolding. So there are case by case basis if you want to reach out to me in email and let me know what you're thinking in terms of your own timeline, and if we can work something out together.
Great, thank you. And then my second question, you mentioned the idea of sort of the IRB pre-approval, where you have documentation basically ready to go. Does especially the tier 2 funding call, can you ever do something similar in terms of securing funding for this type of incident in this type of location, secure funding, knowing that, I don't know, a wildfire in central Washington is likely to happen within this particular window. And so then you secure the funding ahead of time so that you're able to actually respond, not 2.5 weeks later, but actually in the moment. Is that ever possible?
Alyssa, that is a great question. And that's actually how the quick response program used to work. And so we would definitely accept a proposal from you that I don't know if we would say we would definitely fund it, but we can review a proposal from you that has kind of placeholders, which is like, this is what I'm thinking about doing. And then if that thing were to occur, then you could fill in the holes of what you're applying for, and we could get a turnaround really quickly for you. But I would definitely suggest submitting a proposal that has those placeholders. Like, this is what I want to do. Here's the outline. Here's the topic of research. research, everything like that. And then if an event does occur, which hopefully not, but probably yes, will happen, we can get it back to you quickly.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
And I just wanted to tie, thank you, Jen. And I wanted to tie a thread together of, for example, the question that Ronnie asked about, can I take some of the funding, apply that to graduate RAs, and tying that thread with Alyssa. I just know you have such extensive experience with doing wildfire research. And one thing that I've been really working with a lot of faculty recently on, because it's like, oh, I don't have time to get my data curated or to, watch the videos, but I'll say overall, and this is just, it might take, if you were going to publish data in an instrument, I'm just going to say kind of on average, it might take like 10 hours to do the training, to fill out the check sheet, to meet with our partners at Design Safe. And one of the things I've said to faculty is, that is like, bring in a student and have them work with you to do that. It's a great experience for them to learn how to do this, and they can help with getting a lot of that curation off the ground, making sure that you have the most recent instrument and so forth. So I just wanted to put a plug in for anybody who's on here who does have data, wildfire or fire weather ready specific data or instruments that you think might be eligible for that tier 3. I just think that's another beautiful place for thinking about engaging students to really have them help you to move through that process and to prep some of the materials for it. And then again, what is the outcome of that? As Castle was saying, not only does NOAA then have access where we can start doing more replication across events and so forth and building a larger repository of data that's out there. We're also, again, training and mentoring a next generation related to how do we get these materials up there so they are accessible with that permanent DOI, digital object identifier. So thanks for those questions, Alyssa. And I'm going to take Ji Young put a great one in the chat that I know said this is a personal question, but I think this may relate to others on the call, because as Jen noted, one of the requirements, since this funding is federal funding, that you must, the lead investigator must be in a US state, territory, or tribal region. But we are open, and we've had this happen before, where co-principal investigators or students, for example, might be outside of the US or its territories or tribal regions. So Ji Young said, after December, I'll no longer maintain the position at the UA. From December on, we'll be moving to a new position in South Korea. If this is the case, can I still submit the proposal as a principal investigator? So the short of it is, Ji Young, if you are in that position right now, go ahead, get that in. You are absolutely eligible because you are at a US-based institution right now. That funding will be issued when you're still at a US-based institution. But once you make that move, then what we've often encouraged investigators to do, for example, we have a funded investigator in Australia right now, but we had to say, I'm sorry, we can't fund you as the lead. You can be a co-investigator, but the lead must be here in the US due to the funding requirements. So Ji Young, that's what I'd say. If you were, we want to keep this partnership with you, want to have you apply, but it may mean once you make that move to South Korea, whatever ties you still have with investigators here in the US, they would need to move to that principal investigator level, and you might move to the co-investigator level, because we can't have somebody at the prime level who is outside of the US. So Jen, anything else you'd add to that, or does that cover Ji Young's question?
No, that covers it. We just have instituted our policy is that if at the time of applying to award, if you're affiliated with a US institution, then you are good to go. And even if it changes in the duration of the research, that's fine, because when you receive the money and you applied for the award, you were affiliated with a US institution. So since you're leaving in December, I think that's no problem at all.
Nice, thank you.
And then Stacia, I see, has a question too that I was going to turn to, and she said she's not applied for something on a rolling deadline before, but does applying sooner than later make a difference in terms of funds available, or is this irrelevant? So first I would start by saying, great question. And there is, we do have a pot of money to give out. However, we're looking at quality over quantity here. And so it doesn't necessarily mean you have to apply sooner to receive the money. If you have a good award later on, we'll try to do our best, even if a big event happens and a lot of money goes out in response to that event, we will still try to distribute the money evenly across the year, if that makes sense, to the best proposals. So we aren't just going to fund everyone that comes in. We will be funding ones that are high quality, that are really in the scope of the research that we're looking to achieve. And yeah, so there's not a timeline as long as you submit before December 31st.
And Stacia, we sure do hope that you will submit. So, and to all of you on the call, we're really hoping you're going to take advantage of this opportunity. And I'm so happy to share, we can now say this officially because the funds have moved, that in addition to the 4 special calls we've already issued due to this partnership with NOAA and the National Science Foundation with the Hazard Center, we now have 4 more special calls that are going to be forthcoming over the next 2 years. And so nothing set in concrete with any of those next 4 calls, but it's such a pleasure to get to announce to all of you that those 4 more, that we have 2 more years of this that are coming. So Stacia, we just say to you, you know, if something happened, if there were major wildfire events that unfold, and we did exhaust this pot of money very rapidly, thanks to the fact that we now have the 2 more years, that gives us more flexibility. And our NOAA partnership is just extraordinary that we could come back together and say, oh my gosh, all of the funds did get exhausted here. Do we need to extend this call? Do we need a follow-on call, et cetera? So that's just not making any commitments, not speaking out of school to anybody here right now, but just letting you know that it is official. We are going to for sure have 4 more calls as part of this special program, and that's really exciting. And so we, as we're kind of bringing this to a close, you are our community. We want to hear from you. If you have ideas, we're constantly sort of working across what are the NOAA priorities, what are the Hazard Center priorities, what's happening in our world, in our social world, our environment that we need to respond to, and also wanting to hear from our researchers. And so just, you know, again, use that has.research awards email, and let's be in touch about that. And I'll give one last call. We have 6 minutes left. I think we got all the questions and comments in the chat and all the hands, but does anybody else, will say going once, going twice? If you have a question, pop your hand up or in the chat.
I also will just have one more comment as people are thinking about their next question is, and don't let, if you've applied for funding from us before through a special call, don't let that deter you from applying again for new funding, because we do love to see the continuation of people's research. And we think that's really important for people who are in the field, who are dedicated to looking at a certain topic, who want to follow that thread over time to see what long-term outcomes are and everything. So please do always, you know, see our new special calls and don't be dissuaded from applying again just because you've already received money. We do encourage you to apply again.
And thank you, Jen and Castle and Jonathan. I'm going to call on you next for any closing comments. I was just going to say to Stacia's question, I really appreciate you asking it, because as you followed on in the chat and said too, just given the timeline of this grant and what's happened in the wildfire season in the US this year, which again, speaking from experience here in Boulder, Colorado, of a horrific event unfolding on December 30th, 2021, that what is wildfire season, right, in the world that we're living in. But if this does end up being a less active than normal wildfire season, and remember call 3 with the tornado season, same thing that Castle, Jonathan, Gina, and I will, with Jen and I, will undoubtedly debrief and say, do we want to extend those deadlines if we don't end up expending all of the funds because it's a less active than usual season, for example? And so again, that's the great thing about this continued partnership, is we are going to have that flexibility, as you're alluding to, Stacia, to know whether we need to open something up for a longer period or revise in light of, again, what's happening in our social and natural environment. So with that, Jen and I, before we just give a huge shout out of gratitude, we wanted to turn the mic back over to Castle and or to Jonathan. If you have any closing words, questions, comments that you want to bring into the room before we log off.
Sure. I would just say, what thoughtful questions all of you had. I mean, this is, we're really excited about what all of you are going to put together for this. I'll just reiterate what Lori said. Please take a look at the online materials. We worked really hand in hand with the Natural Hazard Center to make sure all of NOAA's kind of priorities were in there. So that can kind of be your cheat sheet, if you will, of like things that you should kind of look into. in terms of what might be great to study and would be beneficial to NOAA. And also just to really highlight the tier 1, this was stuff that we're continuing to learn from the previous special calls, and the one with the tornado. We've noticed we haven't had a really significant tornado season. So we thought about introducing that tier 1 to really explore, well, what are things that are happening now before a wildfire actually happens? So that should also be a really great highlight, and something we're also really excited about, providing some of that baseline data that we may not always have access to. So those are just a couple quick highlights. This has been so great. I'm really excited to see what all of you put together. Back to you, Lori.
Nice. Thank you so much, Castle. And thank you, Jonathan, for what you put in the chat and just amplifying Jen, Jolie, Candace, Melissa, the whole Natural Hazard Center team. We just want to thank our partners at NOAA and the National Science Foundation. We want to thank all of you for logging on today and for your time, care, and attention. We really want to encourage you, share this special call, reach out to colleagues who you know are doing vital and life-saving and life-sustaining work in this wildfire space, and encourage them to apply for these funds. And as you all know, for anybody who's been to the workshop or one of our other events, we start and we end on time. And so today we're going to even end 2 minutes early with a note of gratitude to all of you. And so again, thank you for being here. Thank you for everything that you do. We look forward to seeing your proposals, and please remember to take care of yourself and others. We will see you soon. Thank you. Bye, everyone.